Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Hi everyone, this is the time of the year when Nightlight promotes several conferences. Over the years, our listeners have helped to grow the conferences. We've been doing this for 6 years, and a few years prior to that on other networks. We're kicking off this year's series with Mothman scholars in anticipation of this year's Mothman Festival to be held at Point Pleasant on September 21st and 22nd. We have Steve Ward and SUSY Bastille, who co-host with Andy Mercer the High Strangeness Factor and the Paranormal Book Club. And you can see SUSY on her show, the Pukwudgie Whisperer. And we also have Jaci and Bill KOUSOULAS. They are the authors of Bridging the Tragedy, Silver Linings in the Mysterious Ohio River Valley. We're also going to have one of this year's speakers, Eric Mintel, but he is napping at the moment because he will be joining Barbara's good friend George on his show Shore to Shore, so you can catch them later tonight. But you can watch Eric's shows on YouTube. Eric Mintel Investigates. Read his new book, Eric Mintel Investigates Casebook Investigations 2016 to 2024, and you can see him perform with his jazz quartet and also his appearance tonight on Coast to Coast. So how's everyone doing?
Good. Good, Mark.
Good. Okay. Yeah, I'll go. All right. I'm looking forward to the festival in a month, and I look forward to doing these shows because the festival really is the best get together in the state. Out of all the things to do in the Ohio Valley over the summer, the Mothman Festival is something I just really look forward to, and we can get into the huge audience from a couple years ago. So, Steve, you're working with Jeff to put this together. What are some new things that might be going on this year? Just can you give us a recap of what so many people look forward to each year?
I actually don't have a list of all the speakers, although I will be speaking on Sunday about the Shaver mystery, doing something a little bit different. The festival, it runs 2 days. They have speakers on Saturday and Sunday. There's up and down Main Street. There's food. There's T-shirts on 3rd Street, which is perpendicular. That's usually where the speakers have their tables, and they're all very accessible. Well-known authors and people that do this sort of thing. And also, Saturday night, we take people into the dreaded TNT area. Now, the TNT area, for people that don't know, is about 9 miles north of Point Pleasant, where the Mothman was seen originally. And it's a very creepy area. Now it's the McClintock Wildlife Preserve. And but we have sort of like a Halloween hayride on Saturday night. And I go in ahead of time and set up some, creepy crawlies with their eyes lit up and rubber monsters and fuzzy spiders and some giant spider webs. But the main attraction, John and Tim Frick, who portray the Men in Black by day, they fly the Mothman out by the old acid plant. He runs down a wire. They have this ingenious, low-tech hand crank delivery system, and they have his eyes lit up, and they blast a sound effect from I won't say where it's from because maybe they'll get sued, but it's very cool. So, but you have to get there early Saturday to buy your ticket. That's the only thing that costs a few bucks is the hayride, and we go late into the night, and we often the Friday before, a bunch of us meet at Village Pizza, which used to be Tiny's restaurant where a famous Mothman sighting occurred. And anyway, it's just a lot of fun. My first festival was 2006, and I was just grinning from ear to ear. I mean, I had read John Keel's book years before, but you got to meet all kinds of well-known authors. And, back then I would get the fever, and I'd buy just about anything with Mothman on it, T-shirts, books, souvenirs, or whatever. So it's just such a good time.
It really is. You just can't say enough good things about how well managed it is, quality people. Always enjoy it.
You can attend the museum. I recommend people go down either a separate time or go down Friday, because the line to the museum just goes around the block. And last Sunday, even though it was raining, people were out there in the rain waiting to get in. So, and also Jeff has a couple other stores next to the museum, the Point Pleasant Trading Company, which has all kinds of cool souvenirs and so forth. And a few doors down to the south is Bunker 304, which is kind of like an old vinyl shop. And so, and of course, there's a lot of other businesses there, restaurants and so forth. So it just the crowds are huge, though, so you have to be aware of that.
Okay. When people have their very pleasant tour of the museum, learn a little bit more about what was the recreation of Point Pleasant at the time of the sightings. they can walk down the street, and Steve, can you tell them about the memorial and the bridge painting on the flood wall?
Right. 6th Street is where the bridge used to extend over to Ohio. That's the one that collapsed, killing 46 people. Bill and Jaci have written a book all about that, like you just mentioned. And there is a mural, a memorial, and the 46 names of the people that died are embedded on the sidewalk. And, of course, let's not forget the Mothman statue. And people line up to get their picture by there. There is a...
And touch the shiny hiney.
They do terrible things to the shiny hiney. But there's also an escape room, but which is very cool. I don't believe they're gonna operate it during the festival. And there's also Mothman Blacklight Mini Golf, which is I haven't played it, but the setup, the graphics are just amazing. So the speakers cover all kinds of subjects. It's not just about the Mothman.
Okay, where's the Blacklight putt-putt golf?
If you go into the Point Pleasant Trading Company, there's a stairway that goes up, and that's how you reach it. And you take the stairway to the escape room, which I'm pretty sure you'll have to go, maybe the week before or the week after, but that's above the Mothman Museum. And the Mothman Museum is spectacular. I mean, it's so well put together. And there are, I'm trying to think now, 5 different documentaries going on at the same time. And if you go all the way to the one in the back, the Mothman Legacy, I just want to warn you, you may see my handsome countenance in there a few times if you go in to watch it.
Okay, and the escape room is fairly new, and Joey Medea designed it. Is that
he
was part of
a big part in it, and Joe Perdue and Ron Lanham also had a big part in it. They did a lot of testing of it. And it's basically as I recall, you start out in production of Mary Hyer's Office. You have to sell clues to get into the next. I think there's a Man in Black section, and there's 3 or 4 rooms you have to go through. You have an hour to get through there. I keep telling people I'm not going to do it because I'm kind of known as the Mothman guy. And I failed. They find me 2 or 3 weeks later, dehydrated. Not having soul in the food. So, but it's again, it's spectacular the way they put it together.
Okay. Let's we'll get to Jaci and Bill's book, and the audience is familiar with them, but we need to introduce SUSY since she hasn't been a regular with us. But SUSY, what's your background, and how did you get interested in these paranormal?
Blame that on my family. I
do a lot of that too.
It's the best way to get out of anything, right? So I kind of was labeled as the spooky one as a small child. And then Puckwudgie specifically is my dad's fault. He used to kind of use Puckwudgies as the boogeyman to scare us out of like going out in the woods or into the swamp that was by our house. So I always had an interest of that, and I grew up watching things like X-Files and In Search Of, and my Puckwudgie fascination from my childhood was kind of reawakened when they came out with a Bridgewater Triangle documentary back in 2013. And I said, oh, my dad didn't make those up. Those or actually there's something to it. And from that point, I started deep diving puckwudgies. And I always say that Mothman specifically is cool because you can find almost every type of paranormal incident back in that Mothman flap in the 60s. And there actually was little people sightings during that as well. So, of course, eventually I found my way to Mothman from puckwudgies eventually.
Do you see any correlation between puckwudgies and Mothman?
I do. You have these high strangeness areas. Mothman is, a little bit unique, and I think that's why we all love him so much. But, up in the Bridgewater Triangle where you have, it's known for puckwudgie sightings, there have been Mothman-like sightings. It's often called a thunderbird up here, but the descriptions of it are very much Mothman-like. About a 6-foot-tall black figure that just kind of erupts wings and flew straight up into the sky. I have heard the glowing red eyes occasionally also, not all the time. But when you think thunderbird, you think actually like a huge bird. But that I would, the sightings up there, I would describe as like a winged humanoid more than a thunderbird.
Okay, and you're doing a lot of your research in the New England area, and Bridgewater Triangle is there. Is the New England landscape conducive to maintaining a population of these types of paranormal animals? There are a lot of caves. You're at the swamps a lot.
Yeah, they do seem to like the swamps for sure. We get them a lot around. New England is kind of known for having stone walls. They're all over the place. We're just lousy with them. But we also have some ancient stone ceremonial sites. And there are a lot of sightings around those, all different types of paranormal, from phantom fires to spook lights or ghost lights or orbs, to Bigfoot-like creatures, to little people, and, traditional ghost sightings even, and of course UFOs. Can't leave those out.
Okay, so and let's bring Jaci and Bill in here. What's the latest on your paranormal research? Any follow up from bridging the tragedy? What catch the audience up on what you two have been doing since we did this about a year ago.
And good evening, everybody. Nice to visit with you all here again. We've been busy. 2024 has been kind of a crazy year for us. It's been up and down. We began back in February interviewing people for our next book, which is going to be similar to Bridging the Tragedy, which focused on Mothman and the Silver Bridge disaster, and then looking at the positive outcomes that happened within the community and for the people who experienced both those two phenomena back in the 60s. We kind of broadened our approach for this next book. It's going to also be about trauma and paranormal experiences. We're trying to determine whether there is a relationship between trauma and paranormal activity, whether it's something that's causal, whether they're just related, whether they're not related at all. I have my ideas about that, and I think, Jackie and I have some different thoughts when it comes to a possible relationship or relationships between trauma and paranormal activity. But again, we want to focus on the positive outcomes that happen in the lives of the people who experience these things. So we interviewed one individual in February, 2 more in March. We were off and running, and then we had some family health issues that became front and center for us. So for the next few months, we had to kind of lay low and take care of our families. And thankfully, we've been kind of regrouping from that. In fact, we just returned from Abilene, Texas, where we had the opportunity to interview a gentleman by the name of Monroe Nevels. So for folks who are familiar with ufology, the Rendlesham Forest incident is referred to as Britain's Roswell. In 1980, there was a craft that was sighted in between a couple of twin Air Force bases that were U.S. Air Force bases in Britain. And a gentleman by the name of Jim Peniston, who's kind of a friend of ours, he lives here in northern Illinois. We got to know him first. But we reached out to Monroe Nevels, who was one of the staff sergeants who investigated the actual landing site. And so we traveled down to Texas and interviewed him a couple Saturdays ago, and we just had a tremendous time with him. We got about 4 hours of information from Monroe. We've also had the opportunity to interview Reverend Michael Carter, who I think you probably all know from the Ancient Alien series, and just being an all-around good guy. I mean, what a wonderful person he is. So we had a conversation with him. We've got a few more kind of lined up that are coming up here soon, and I think we're actually going to interview a person or two while we're at the Mothman Festival as well. So that's at least my part of the story, but I'm sure that I missed some things that my better half can fill in blanks on as well.
Well, that's kind of where we're at. I think we have 7 interviews done at this point, and we're transcribing them ourselves because to perform the study and get really clear, good results when they're coded, the data's coded, you have to really immerse yourself into the data. So by transcribing them and editing them and working with them, I mean, we go through the interviews so many times before they're even published in the book. And so in order to really get a good grip of what's going on, we do the editing ourselves. But what I wanted to say about the interviews so far is we did a library presentation when we went up to the center of Wisconsin to interview Dean Bergstrom. I just lost his name. No. Yeah. Is it? Dean Bergstrom. Bertram. Yeah. Anyway, he was at the library with us, but somebody else that was there was talking to us, and we gave her like a half hour to get home and talk to her husband, and then we showed up at her house by her request and interviewed her also. And I'm telling you, these interviews, I mean, when you're just dealing with paranormal and trauma, the different types of trauma are unreal, and we're getting stuff all over the place. This interview that I'm talking about is so unique that, I mean, I'm really looking forward to getting, digging deep into it and trying to figure it out, because she literally had an accident, a car accident, and had frontal lobe injury, and she was seeing grays after that. I mean, there's like this huge, long whole story, which I don't want to give it all away. But by the time she got done telling her story just about the car accident and the frontal lobe injury, she said, "So do you think it was real?" That's what she asked us. And it's like, it's really open to an individual interpretation. And I think a lot of them are. But yeah, that's where we're at. And I mean, it's really been super interesting, and things just keep, like one of the interviews we did, a young lady here in Chicago area, and we were talking about a house she grew up in, and it was haunted. And I mean, seriously haunted. And when her mom moved out and sold this house to somebody else, it showed up on Facebook. And it was like this picture of her house that she grew up in. And somebody was asking, does anybody know what's going on with this house? It was sold like 10 years ago, and the people started renovating it, and no one's been back. So, I mean, these are legit stories. It's not just like people coming out of the woodworks and just telling us stuff, but it's been really a lot of fun getting back into the interviewing part. That's my favorite part, actually, is meeting the different people and doing the presentations at places. I do want to say real quick, though, I want to plug us because during the Friday before the Mothman Festival, the new River Museum is open for the second year now, and Bill and I are going to be doing a presentation there before I think I don't even know what time it is. Bill would have to tell what the time it is, but we were actually able to do a presentation at the library. At the River Museum. So in the River Museum, I think it's there already. But if people want to come see us, because we're not presenting at the festival, we just want to be there to visit with people and hang out this year. So we are going to do that short presentation, though.
Okay. And Steve, the Lake and Ray Cook Museum, the River Museum is on the same street as the Mothman Museum. Is that right?
Yeah, 2 years ago, the original one, which was further down, burned, but they salvaged a lot of stuff in there. I've not actually been in the new River Museum yet, so I've got to check that out. But yeah, it's very, very accessible.
Okay, and the Two Endwee Park has a new swing, Wild and Wonderful Swing. Is that?
You know what? I don't know. It's a beautiful park where the two rivers come together, the Ohio and the Kanawha, and you can watch the boats go by, and it's really it's very scenic down there. But heck, I'll have to check out the swing.
Yeah, I think it's one of those new Wild and Wonderful swings. Was just recently installed.
Okay. And also we should mention that there's right there in town opposite the Mothman is a beautiful amphitheater where they have bands and so forth. And Bob Roach is the sculptor that created the Mothman statue. If you go to the foot wall and go left, you'll see other figures out of history like Chief Cornstalk and so forth. So, and it's a beautiful walk up and down the river.
Mm-hmm. And the scenery is breathtaking as well. Long vistas up and down the river.
Right.
It is. I don't know if this upcoming question is relevant to the Mothman legend. And I think it's going to come up in a few weeks when Stan Gordon is a guest. But is there any kind of evidence, or can you interpret anything about the old river channels that go through Point Pleasant, or or when the river was more further to the western side of the Ohio Valley? Has anyone looked into angle, made any kind of connection with the Mothman was a home flooded when the river changed courses, anything like that?
But some suggest that the confluence of the two rivers, add to exacerbate paranormal activity. I don't know if that's true or not. The others here may have some ideas about that. It makes me think of maybe we should mention Mary Heyer, the friend and reporter, friend and colleague of John Keel, who wrote a column called Where the Waters Mingle. And she was the one that chronicled UFO reports, Mothman reports, and even the Men in Black. So I don't know if I have an opinion on that. A lot of people, actually, when I think about it, there was a famous dowser named T.C. Lethbridge who wrote just fascinating books, and he would use a pendulum for dowsing. And he came up with a theory about, you would see ghosts or apparitions sometimes, and when they were kind of like imprint, just would do the same thing over and over again. But a lot of times you'd find out that underneath was a underground stream or something like that. So there may well be something here, but I haven't, looked into that much of it.
I just wondered. Project I've worked on is caused me to encounter some research into ancient river channels. Susie, as you've been researching in New England, are you seeing some kind of similar stone structures near confluences, some kind of memorial for someone who passed away, or it could be interpreted as a spiritual type setting?
Yeah, definitely. The Hockomack Swamp, which is a big part of the Bridgewater Triangle, has been an indigenous burial ground for probably up to 10,000 years. They have dated remains going back 9,000, but that's, just what they've happened to find, so it's probably older than that.
Ice Age. So it's going back to the Ice Age.
Yeah, a little bit, just after the Ice Age. Yeah. And a lot of the sites I go to were ceremonial sites. So those would not have been burial grounds, but they would have been, places of, you could call it worship, to relate to our terms. And water is always near those also. It's either in a swamp or there's a lake nearby or rivers. So, just having the natural feature nearby, there's a lot of lore around water kind of almost conducting paranormal energy. So that definitely could be part of it. I think there's lore around the world about water playing a part in the paranormal.
I was, possible guest, if you go on a rant for a minute, I'll look for the passage, but, so some of the folklore native folklore that has survived, could be traced back to, just say Thunderbirds. Could be traced back to, say, pterodactyls or giants were actually misidentified as mastodons or mammoths. I think what you're saying is based on very real possibilities and how much folklore actually has true stories behind what we're told today.
Yeah, definitely. There was an Algonquin tribe that had the story about these giant beavers blocking how you would get to this lake, and everyone wrote it off as just a silly story until they found fossils of giant beavers from the Ice Age. So, you kind of, some folklore isn't literal. It's representative of something else, but a lot of it is literal, and we just don't take it seriously. So we can't write anything off for sure. You just kind of have to look at things and, try to forget about all your preconceived notions and just use your own critical thinking when you come across these things. And it reminds me today earlier, I saw a meme that says, "Why don't we have ghosts of dinosaurs?" And I said, "Who says we don't?" We should.
That's interesting because I just saw something that the Loch Ness Monster of a dinosaur.
I've heard that theory. I kind of like it, and it doesn't hurt anyone for me to believe that. So that's actually the theory I've chosen to believe.
Yeah, some kind of psychic projection. F.W. Holliday wrote several books on that. He started out believing that it was a flesh and blood creature, not a plesiosaur, but something like an oversized mollusk. And then he found out that, Loch Ness is a high strangeness area, UFOs and all kinds of bizarre encounters. And another little aside here, one of Jim Marr's books, he was talking about the remote viewers. And, sometimes remote viewers were given blind targets, just really weird stuff like UFOs or whatever. Well, they were given the target of Loch Ness Monster, and they would see these things, these kind of bulbous things with the long necks, but when they tried to find out where they came from, they disappeared.
Ooh.
And then there was, Holliday did some research in Ireland, and incredible people were seeing these beasties or whatever, but they would see them in lakes that were maybe half a mile long and 30 feet deep. So how do you explain that? So the ghost or apparition idea may have some validity.
Yeah, Steve, you've been to Loch Ness. What do you think of that possibility, or the geology landscape of the loch? Can you make any kind of comparison with that stretch of the river that Point Pleasant sits in?
I don't know that I can. My visit there was way back in the olden days, 1973, and it was a beautiful day. And I stayed at a youth hostel up in Inverness, and I had Holliday's first book, The Great Orm, O-R-M of Loch Ness, was just an ancient word for worm. He talked. This was before he developed his more, I don't know what you want to call it, psychic theory or whatever. But there were some credible sightings of this thing slithering across the road. And, so I was looking at the water, but I also was looking over my shoulder just in case it showed up that way. But and Holliday had some really bizarre experiences with he and Dr. Donald Ormond did an exorcism of Loch Ness. And all kinds of bizarre psychic things happened afterwards, but that's another story.
Okay. While you and Susie were talking, I did find the passage I was looking for. So thank you for talking while I scrambled for some information. But in Cheryl Clausen's Feasting with Shellfish in the Southern Ohio Valley, she writes, it seems as if these past activities in the very places where these great events had occurred had been kept alive for 4,000 years and were being claimed by leaders seeking a holy alliance. That's like why certain places were chosen for, like a chieftain burial and building a mound on top of him. So, a prehistoric scholar, saying that, for over 4,000 years were kept these places holy. You don't even find that in today's culture. So, what Susie and Steve have said does seem very, memory. She also wrote about memory keepers who kept the stories going for thousands of years. So that it's all characteristic of folklore.
I guess Keel, in the Mothman prophecies, wondered, because strange lights and strange phenomena would occur around certain mounds, and even with the dogmen in southern Wisconsin, he wondered what came first. Did these things exist or show up, and then mounds were built as a result, or were the mounds built and then, due to the residue of the collective mind, create some of these apparitions or whatever?
And you also have to wonder, since you just mentioned Mothman prophecies, the book isn't solely focused on Point Pleasant and the surrounding areas. On page 63, you get New Cumberland, Weirton, Chester, Sistersville, Marietta, other lights appeared near Parkersburg. Well, all these places also did have mounds located near them.
Right. Charleston and so forth. Also, a lot of phenomena occurring around Long Island. It's almost like John Keel was kind of a lightning rod for some of these things wherever he went. So there was equally some strange stuff going on in other parts of the country and the general area that he lived in.
Interesting. So, Steve, since you're a Keel scholar, is there any information that he was drawn to such places? It seems like he did a lot of traveling to spiritual centers.
He started to go to these areas of high strangeness. At first he thought Mothman was just some kind of a oversized bird. But then, we soon found out all of the bizarre things that were going on. I don't know if he was drawn to him or not, but he seemed to, he would even entertain notions, just bizarre notions sometimes, theories about about some of this phenomena, and then they would sightings would show up somewhere that would seem to confirm it, and so it suggests that there's a real psychic component, the collective consciousness, however you want to put it, to this, and I think there's also a very physical component as well, but he just seemed to be, I'm the guy where that kind of thing just doesn't happen.
Okay, not even at the Low Hotel?
No, I've never I've talked to people that have seen apparitions there. And I did have the one weird experience, which I won't repeat, but I had gone out to the TNT area one night, and I came back to my motel, and I experienced a couple flashes of light coming back. I went in the room. The TV set turned on by itself and started flipping steadily through stations. And that's the only bizarre thing that's really happened to me.
Okay, that's pretty freaky.
It is freaky. But fortunately, if I brought somebody back, he's still there flipping channels because that strange stuff happened a few years later there. But unfortunately, he did not come back to Michigan with me.
Okay. All right, Jaci and Bill, you're going to be visiting, arriving Thursday or Friday. Is that right? What do you plan on doing during your few-day stay in Point Pleasant area?
We are getting there Thursday evening, and one of the things that we want to do is go to Carolyn Harris's grave. We've not done that yet, and that's something that every time we go out there, I want to do it, and we don't. And I want to just go out there and take her some flowers, because our book is in memory of her, and she was just a lovely person. And then we are going to meet up with a couple people we've been talking to. They are they're not psychologists, but they work in psychology, and so we've been talking to them quite a bit, and we're going to interview one of them, possibly both of them, while we're there, and then we're just going to hang out. And we really got to make sure we get on that hayride this year, because we keep missing it. So that's one of the things that is on our list early, because we got to make sure we get on Steve's ride. Because isn't that we're just kind of hanging out? And I think we're leaving on Monday or Tuesday. I'm not positive.
It is so much fun. It's just an absolute blast.
Yeah. I mean, I've been out to the TNT late at night, and it's scary as heck. So, on a hayride when I have no way to get out of there, but I want to do it.
It moves fairly slow, but you have to jump off and then find your way out.
Yeah, run, right, yeah. I think I'll stick with the people, thank you.
Okay, let's see, and you do have, Jaci and Bill, you do have Mike Hacker doing the voice for your audiobook. That is now available. Is that correct?
Mike did a fantastic job for us with Bridging the Tragedy. As a matter of fact, I think the audio version is outselling the printed copies right now. And for people who don't know who Michael Hacker is, he got his start a few years ago in the business by doing some of the John Keel compilation books. And since then, he's branched off, and he's done Brad Steiger's work. He's done some of Jacques Vallée's work. He's really made a name for himself. And when it comes to narration, he has a background in drama. So he really brings it when he talks, using different intonations and different accents and such. He's a lot of fun. In fact, he attended the last Mothman Festival with us and actually helped me with the presentation that we gave on Saturday afternoon. He's not coming with us this year, And I did send him a message over Facebook Messenger today just to touch base with him because I hadn't talked to him for a while. And I think we probably will ask him to do the next book as well, too. He just does such a tremendous job.
Yeah, I thought he was a nice guy when we got together last year.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else can... all right. Yeah, you did on page 154, you mention trauma often seems to accompany the paranormal. The paranormal experience itself doesn't have to be negative or traumatic. So, but it seems like in Bridging the Tragedy, you had the basis for your next book, almost with that short passage. As you keep talking with more and more people, are you finding that to be accurate?
I would say out of the half a dozen or so people who we've interviewed so far, they have all spoken to trauma opening the door to paranormal activity. Now, with some of the folks, the trauma and the paranormal activity were the same thing. When we talked to Dean Bertram, if I remember correctly, he had talked about some bedroom visitors that he had when he was a small child. And so for him, coming from a self-professed background of really positive, role models and healthy family dynamics and all that type of thing, it was the activity itself that was traumatic for him. But, as I've been listening here, I was thinking, the one person that I had the opportunity to interview that Jackie wasn't a part of, and she's been a part of all the other interviews that we've done together, but for this one she couldn't. She was out of town. A lady by the name of Gail, incredibly psychic person. In fact, it's funny, psychic, yes, a little absent-minded also, because when I was interviewing her over Zoom, she's in North Central California, she was telling me that she's like, tell me again how we got connected. I said, well, Gail, you called me. That's how we got connected, because she had forgotten about that. But somebody who's connected to the both of us on Facebook said, hey, give these guys a call because your experiences have a lot to do with, I think, what they're looking for. So she called me out of the blue one day. Usually if I get a call from an area code I don't recognize, I just blow it off because there's so much spam calling going on these days. But I grabbed the call, and she started talking to me about some of her experiences, and we lined up an interview, and I finally made that happen right before we went up north to interview the people that we interviewed in Wisconsin. She is somebody who had actually, as a child, her mother, or at least the woman she thought was her biological mother, wasn't. And the mother knew it because the dad had had an affair and brought the baby home and said, you're going to raise this baby, to his wife. I mean, if you can imagine that poor lady. But she was resentful towards Gail, and she would lock her into a cellar, dirt-floored room, and she would stand outside the room, no lights whatsoever. She's like 6 years old, and she was out there singing to her, scream a little louder, I can't hear you. And this poor kid would scream and scream and scream until she'd pass out. And she said her first experience of paranormal activity was in that room. As she was screaming, she began to see like phantasmagorical type of things in front of her with like the face would be melting. It just mortified her. And then she would pass out. But she went on and continues to have a life of psychic activity that's just off the charts. In fact, she can bend. She tells me she's not a talented bender, but she held up a fork that she had bent with her mind, and it looks like Cthulhu's beard turned upside down. I mean, it's got the prongs of the fork going all different directions. It's just crazy. But, I mean, when we talked to Michael Carter, I mean, he talked about the trauma he went through from his bedroom invaders, these different extraterrestrials that had come into his bedroom and just mortified him. And so those two things were commingled for him, the paranormal activity and the trauma. But everybody else we talked to had some type of trauma, like Jackie talked about. Catherine in Wisconsin had the brain trauma, and then she was seeing aliens. So we're seeing this happen over and over and over again. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, the incident that you just discussed is more just abuse. Are you finding something like that example creating like longer lasting side effects than what happened to people who knew someone when the Silver Bridge collapsed? Circumstances were a little different. That was more of a natural disaster. I'm not trying to minimize any trauma that the people experienced, but is one easier to get over if it's caused by just something that happens in nature versus inflicted by another human?
One of the things we found in both Bridging the Tragedy and in some of the preliminary conversations we've had with people we've interviewed for this book has been the whole idea of resilience. It seems that when we are able to withstand something that we really didn't think we'd be able to get through, and then we're able to get through it, that we develop, this characteristic of resilience. It's like we have a muscle memory type of thing happen in our lives, where now we're able to not only handle but really thrive in adversity. And one of the things that I've noticed so far, I just finished transcribing Gail's interview just a couple days ago, was instance after instance after instance. I only talked a little bit about, the mom figure screaming at her and then her beginning to have, encounters and this kind of a thing. But she was also somebody who was abused by a religious leader. She's somebody who was beaten by her father. She's somebody who was almost raped when she was 7 years old by a neighborhood kid and then punched in the gut by that kid's big sister, almost like just to tell her to shut up and not say anything about it. But in any event, she was able to intuit different medical conditions that other people would have. She's been able to, like I talked about, bend the forks and the spoons and things like this. But that's really just kind of scraping the surface. She's had instances where she's almost been in a car accident, and she's seen the car accident play out in front of her, was able to kind of, negotiate what she needed to on the road to avoid an accident before it even happened. In fact, her husband said to her, "How did you know that was going to happen? How did you know that you needed to turn right then at that last minute?" She's like, "I saw the accident before it happened." So she has all these different abilities to have visions and be able to see things. And she when she talks to people, she can tell, like, if somebody's going to die, she can tell somebody else, "Hey, this person's going to die." I mean, she has all kinds of abilities. But we've found with her, at least Jackie hasn't been able to talk to her yet, but how the depth of her experience seems to be related to the depth of the trauma. And another neat thing about Gail that I just so value is, even with her mom, even with her dad, even with the people who harmed her, she has no ill will towards them. She doesn't hate anybody. She's just a very open, accepting, fun person. I mean, as she was talking about all these negative things that happened in her world, she was laughing about it. She's like, oh, and you could tell it wasn't just a coping mechanism. She's just a happy person, which I think is just extraordinary.
Okay. In the example you just gave, you're covering an act of forgiveness, but in like the code section that Jaci referenced earlier, and you have a lengthy section that breaks it down. There's a spiritual development that accompany or can accompany such traumatic events. Andy Colvin gets a little bit into his interest in Buddhism. Can you tell us a little bit about that code?
Well, I think with, what you're referring to there is in Bridging the Tragedy, we go into the way that we were able to find the data. So we didn't want to just interview people and then tell you this is what we think or this is what we feel. We used a methodology it's a scientific methodology. It involves multiple steps, in being able to discern, similarities across various interviews and how things presented to us in the general sense. So you go from the specific to the general, you generalize it, and then that's how you determine those things. But with spiritual development, a lot of the times, especially with Bridging the Tragedy, I would say probably out of the 11 people we interviewed, there were probably 8 of them that talked about a faith in God or faith in a higher power or practiced, Christianity or in Andy's case, Buddhism or, just other people who had faith where they didn't have faith before, even if it's just in some unseen divine providence, whatever it might be. But I would say that we'll definitely identify spiritual development as a part of this next project as well, too. And the first thing that jumps to mind is Reverend Michael Carter. Michael is an interfaith Universalist Unitarian minister, and I don't think that was what he was doing when he began having his bedroom visitors with the aliens and such. So I think, one of the things that I learned working on the PhD was that is the whole idea of post-traumatic growth is something that arises from us out of these traumatic situations that basically shatter the way we see the world. So let's say, like in Michael's case, Michael Carter he was an actor, I believe, in New York City, and so he was doing his thing and building a name for himself and getting into show business and all these types of things. And then after having these different encounters over time, he ended up becoming a minister, and he sees a higher calling. And I know Michael, because you introduced me to him, Mark, and he's just one of the kindest, most benevolent, fun-loving, easygoing, good guys, really, that we've come across, in my lifetime anyway. And I think that we're going to see that. I'm sure he is. I'm just sure he is. I think we're going to see that, we see with Dr. Dean Bertram. I mean, what a genuinely humble, positive guy he is. And his whole thing is horror and macabre and films and ufology and all this fascinating stuff. But he's also a very positive Christian-type person. I mean, you see this, I think, over and over and over again in people's lives of the folks that have been through tremendous trauma, because from tremendous trauma comes tremendous faith. And oftentimes, if it's not just faith in ourselves, it's faith in some type of a higher power or in society or in the greater good or whatever you want to call it. I think we're going to see that again and again in this next study as well.
Okay. Okay, that was kind of a heavy segment there. I should give people a few minutes to let all that sink in and change topics for just a minute. But I have a question for Steve and Susie. And Steve, you spoke at the Boru conference in April in Lindora, Pennsylvania. Okay, so that is covering kind of like the Mothman Festival in Boru, or at about the northern and southern extremities of the Ohio Valley region. Do you find that these two conferences, as well as the other ones in between, or Brian Seach and Fred Saluga and everyone else talks about Bigfoot and the other cryptid sightings in the area, are they expanding our understanding of just say Black Panthers, and how much is out there that we are just rediscovering?
It seems that many started out as these things as unknown creatures in flesh and blood. So many of them, Fred Saluga will say that Bigfoot is paranormal. Brian and Terry have kind of gone in that direction as well. It's always Dan Hagman puts it on. It's always a good conference, and it always has a variety of speakers, and it's very affordable too. So, I think it's a really good group there that you get a lot of information.
Yeah, and Susie, are you seeing the same thing in the New England area with, just say the Exeter UFO conference and, the other, destinations that you've been to, like America's Stonehenge, that are that's also been featured on some of the paranormal TV shows?
Yeah, I think conferences are definitely important to, get out and hear what people have to say and learn about their research. And, shows like this, too, are equally important. And it also gives people kind of a forum to meet other people that have had similar experiences as them also. But I will say I have to advocate for boots on the ground research. I think experiences are more important than evidence. And when you are, getting out and having these experiences, it's important to then have the conference later to be able to talk about those experiences. So I think you need both things. We need people going out into the field and experiencing things to be able to have these conferences. So I think they're both, a great part of the community for sure.
Okay, well, and thanks for the plug for these services Nightlight provides. But are you, Susie? Are you finding people are becoming more open, as they attend these conferences, about their sightings, maybe ancient aliens, has helped to make it more comfortable to say, I saw a sky worm or something like that.
I think some things are becoming more acceptable to talk about. You might be able to talk about seeing the UFO pretty easily or seeing Bigfoot. And I'm going to bring up puckledges again as an example. I just spoke to a woman on Sunday who had a little people sighting. And she said to me, I never tell anyone about this because you can't go out and tell people you saw gnomes in the woods. They're going to think you're crazy. So there is still some stigma around certain things. Other things are becoming a little bit more acceptable to talk about. But if you go to these conferences, eventually you will find someone you can talk to things about that won't make you feel crazy, for sure.
Okay. Steve, speaking of talking about crazy things, is Mark Randall going to be at the Mothman Festival with his artwork?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he is.
Do you want to describe if it's even possible to do that, but the two of you have written some books. He's illustrated them. Mark does a fantastic job of recreating some of the scenes where might have been Mothman sightings. I think what he does is fascinating. Do you want to try to describe what Mark does?
It's not easy, but I would check him out online. He just has this great vision to capture these events and cryptids and so forth. He and I wrote a book together called Mothman High Strangeness. He did all the graphic art, and it kind of demonstrates the year of the Garuda, the year of the Mothman. John Keel, the Silver Bridge collapse, Mothman, the Men in Black, Indrid Cold, and he and I wrote the pieces for it. So it's very nice, and he does that a lot. He will ask people to contribute and give them an opportunity to do something like this. He's done that for several people. So he makes sort of like, I don't know if we call them postcards or whatever, but he'll have different themes like different Mothman encounters, and he sells posters and so forth. But just if you have any interest at all in this area, just check him out on Amazon. And his work is just phenomenal.
Yeah, he autographed a couple of the posters. Well, I think he autographed all of them that went out as Christmas gifts last year, and I have a couple hanging on the walls. But I really like the one where it's kind of like Mothman running across the road, and looks like there's like a trailing image behind him. I like that. I really like that one. And that came in a poster form. I think he has a unique vision for presenting his artwork.
Yeah, he goes around to a lot of different conferences, and I always have a really nice display. And again, he's definitely worth checking out.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree. I wanted to gives a regular attendee a plug for what he brings. I think it's something totally different, and hopefully he'll be there. Okay. Let me turn over to one of Bill and Jackie's pages. Because I don't have it underlined, but you, Jaci and Bill, you have is on page 239. You have a paranormal. One of the focus codes is on paranormal awakening. Is that a little bit different from the topic we were talking about earlier? It is that's like the traumatic event is that kind of like what starts what might be a lifelong pattern? You have it on page 239.
Can you describe a little bit more of that, Mark? I'm drawing a little bit of a blank right now.
Okay, well, it's on paranormal awakening.
Mm-hmm.
I think Andy's let's put it this way. I knew it existed, but I didn't read it until Andy and I hadn't talked in like 20 years, and then in 2002 we got a hold of each other because he'd been looking for me and I didn't know it because Ohio State didn't get in touch with me. He had called the Alumni Association, and so after that he said, "You need to read that book." So I did at that point. Then it goes into paranormal recall. So
go ahead, honey, if you're going to answer that.
Well, that's Harriet, a part of Harriet's interview, and I'm not sure if this is what it even means, but for me, what a paranormal awakening would mean is something that happened that you didn't even know that it happened until years later when it's like an awakening comes to you. Like, so what she was talking about then was things that were occurring in their hometown when they were growing up. And I mean, they knew some of the stuff was happening, but like when I was growing up too, some things are just like, it just happens. Even to this day, I have paranormal stuff happen, and I don't realize it's happened until it's over. I don't realize it while it's going on. So when Andy and Harriet reconnected, Andy had read the Mothman prophecies, and he told Harriet that she needed to read that book because so much about what they were going through as children. So I think that's what Harriet refers to, or maybe it was coded as paranormal awakening, but I think Harriet called it a paranormal awakening because it explained so much of her childhood.
And thanks for reading that, Mark, because the minute you started reading it, then I remembered. I had my paranormal recall of what paranormal awakening means. But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it kind of sounded like maybe a little similar to topic we were talking about earlier, but if it's different, I just wanted to touch on that because maybe there are listeners who might be realizing something now that could be related to what you're discussing. I was just hoping to have you, maybe touch base with listeners on that subject.
Well, and I'm glad you brought it up too, because out of all the people that we've gotten to know, I would say probably, and I'm going to go back to 2016 specifically, because that's when the first time that we made a trip to Point Pleasant. But of all the people that we've met since then, I really think that Harriet she's the most fascinating person that I've met yet. She is incredibly psychic. She's incredibly intelligent. She has total recall, meaning she can read a page from a book and spit it right back out to you again. She's just a fascinating person. In fact, when we first met her, we met her on a Zoom meeting, and it was during conversation. She took a look at me, and we all just really connected it very, very quickly right out of the gate. But Harriet looked at me and she said, "There's something wrong with you." Well, now Jackie knows there's something wrong with me. She's lived with me for 20 years. But Harriet looks at me and she says, "There's something physically wrong with you." And I said, "Well, I have trouble with my back. I've been having trouble with my back for many years." And she said, "No, there's something different. And the vibe that I'm getting is you have diverticulitis." Now, I didn't even really know what that was. But within 2 days after we had met her, I was rushed to the hospital by ambulance because I had a gastrointestinal problem going on that was related to diverticulitis. So she pinpointed that, just by talking to me over a Zoom meeting. So it's not like we were even really in proximity with each other. But Harriet, in Bridging the Tragedy, when we interviewed her, she didn't really go into Mothman encounters, but during the same time that the Mothman flap was happening, there was all kinds of UFO activity also. And she lived in a neighborhood in Charleston called, at the time, I think it was called, what was it called back then, honey? Mound. It was called Mound, West Virginia. It's called North Charleston now. But she had a UFO encounter, and there were missing time things that happened there too. She thought she was gone for like 15 minutes. Her mom said she'd been gone for 3 hours. And she also has the Agent Scully marks on the back of her neck, like from the X-Files, where Dana Scully, after she'd been abducted, she had like a couple of scalloped marks, like a scar. She has that on her neck also. So in getting to know Harriet over the years, she's just a fascinating person. And I'm glad you brought up that paranormal awakening, because like Jackie said, when she read the Mothman prophecies, it was like connecting the dots. She said, "Oh my God." She said, "This is exactly what I experienced back in the 60s, but I didn't have a name for it. We didn't know what it was, but that underlying current of fear that runs throughout the entire book," she's like, "we all felt that. It was terrifying."
Okay. And she was just, you were just repeating that she said it was terrifying. And another one of the codes is a traumatic event creates a photographic memory. One of the side effects.
Well, in Harriet, it certainly is. She didn't recall having the photographic memory until after she had her missing time UFO experience. But after that, there were people who came to the school that she went to that were studying her and a group of others that they referred to as the genius kids. And she had total recall at that point. For whatever reason, she was able to remember basically everything. She read our book, which is 307 pages, in one day. And she could probably spit it right back to you today.
in examples like Harriet, do you find that most people with going through post-traumatic growth are using not superpowers, but the newly discovered abilities for good purposes?
I would say the people that we've talked to, for the most part, really, they're good-hearted people. And I think in terms of even the folks who didn't have paranormal activity, but who dealt with the Silver Bridge disaster, like Jimmy Wedge, who I really still, to this day, feel like he is the center of that book, because his experience was so profound. He lost both his mom and dad in the Silver Bridge disaster, and we were nervous going into the interview with him because we wanted to be very respectful of the fact that he lost his mom and dad. What we didn't realize until we got into the interview process was that Jimmy was the oldest of all the people who had experienced the Silver Bridge disaster that we interviewed. He was 25 when he lost his mom and dad, and I still have both my mom and dad now, and I'm more than twice 25, and I'm very grateful for that. But he, just really attributed having those first 25 years with his mom and dad, that they gave him enough in life then to be able to have a successful life. Not only did he rebound from losing mom and dad, he said, I've been married twice. He says, I've had 3 kids by 2 different women, and I feel like that's a really good thing. He's been a successful businessman, although he didn't really describe himself as successful, but he says, I'm not a millionaire, but I'm pretty close. That sounds pretty successful to me. He's been a successful politician. He's been a successful lobbyist. He's done all kinds of positive things with his life. And I'm not saying that he couldn't have accomplished that without having gone through the trauma that he dealt with, but I really believe, like the old adage states, whatever doesn't kill us makes us stronger. But you have to qualify that with, if you choose to take the steps necessary to develop that strength. And I think Jimmy Wedge was one who did that. I think that the other folks that we interviewed who went through those difficult things, they also learned and gained and did things that really not necessarily superpower, but they discovered something within themselves that they were able to then grow and develop and nurture and turn into really pretty positive lives, and some of them really pretty extraordinary lives.
And Susie and Steve, similar to photographic memory, you've had Michael on the Paranormal Book Club, and I think he was talking about initiation, his recent book, Initiation, and in that book, he does talk about experiencers do want to make the world a better place after the experience. There are other traits that he brings up about what happens, some sudden changes that frequently happen after a sighting or an experience. Do you get a feeling that all these traits are fairly common? It's just the human condition, whether it's caused by natural disaster or UFO sighting, possible abduction. Did in other books did Keel go into more detail and provide other examples that buttress what Michael incorporated in his initiation?
I talked a lot about experiencers and, found a lot of patterns. It's funny because a lot of times, we had the what we term silent contactees, and these were the people that had some kind of experience, whether it was a entity or channeling or whatever, and they were given a purpose, and sometimes sent on quests, and sometimes given predictions that would come true, and you call them silent contactees because they had absolutely no desire for fame or to write a book or anything like that. And he in some cases, it didn't work out good for people. He would call it false illumination. But he believed that this is, the same kind of thing that has gone on for centuries, that whatever this intelligence is or this force, sometimes it seems to be very positive, other times it's very negative. But yeah, he saw all kinds of patterns and even bizarre stuff. He had a letter from a psychologist, I guess, that said that he had this young man that said a UFO landed and his dead father stepped out, and he asked Keel, "Is this have you ever heard of this before?" And he said, "Yeah, there's been dozens of cases like that." Now, there does seem to be, Joshua Cutchin has written a book, I can't remember the name of it, which deals with death and UFOs. There is some kind of weird connection there. Some people just think that the entity, the alien, is masking themselves and stepping out as a dead person. But so that there's just, there's so many bizarre things. And, I wonder sometimes why we pursue this, because there seems to be so many dead ends and left turns and everything. But yeah, Keel found all kinds of connections with these experiences.
Is that Ecology of the Soul?
Yes, yes, that's it.
Okay, yeah. Joshua's been a guest here on Nightlight with Thieves in the Night. That was a really fascinating discussion. Joshua does a fantastic job of researching. I was just trying to figure out which one of his books you were referencing.
Right.
Yeah.
Thieves in the Night is almost a follow-up to Jacques Vallée's Passport to Magonia, and he also did a 2-volume book on Bigfoot. I can't think of the name of it, but the psychic side of it. So, yeah, his contributions are pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think he's excellent as a paranormal researcher and author. Okay. All right. Susie, do you have any follow-ups with what we've been discussing?
Yeah, while everyone else is talking, I was kind of trying to think, like, the people I know and the people I've interviewed that have had paranormal experiences, and I can't think of any one of them that, to what Bill was saying, doesn't want to make the world better. But to Steve's point, the intentions might be good, but the outcome might not always be. So I think that from what I have seen personally, I do think that people that have paranormal experiences kind of, get their mind opened a bit, and they sometimes maybe want to help other people open their minds to the same thing, but we don't always know the intentions of these paranormal entities, and sometimes it could be misguided, or just sometimes, people might have a different interpretation of their own experiences that might be, skewed by personal beliefs and things like that. But I can't think of a single person that I've met or, listened to an interview on that I felt, wasn't trying to help other people. So I would say that is the theme that I have seen with experiencers.
But there is there's a lot of they call it the trickster aspect to some of these. And, I talked about the silent contactees. There was a famous Dr. Lowhead, I think his name was a professor at the University of Michigan. And he was working with a psychic who was doing channeling, and they were getting accurate predictions and so forth. And then the big one, on December 21st or whenever it was back in the 50s, the world was going to end, and the Space Brothers were going to land on a particular hill and save the worthy people that should be saved. And so he went full. Even John Keel kind of ran into that too. When he was getting these predictions that were coalescing about this EM effect that was going to happen on December 15th, 1967, and he was holed up in his apartment in New York with balls of water, and he was completely paranoid. But Lowhead, of course, the aliens didn't land, and I think he might have lost his tenure as well. But so there's even with when you get into the Skinwalker Ranch and things like that, there are, if you isolate some aspects of the Skinwalker Ranch, you might think aliens or extra-dimensional beings or whatever, but there are aspects of it that are very tricksterish, and so that's something that people need to be aware of.
And as the pro bono representation for all trickster entities, I must defend them. We don't know what their motivations and goals are. They might have tricked people to go on a hill to save them from a horrible accident. You can't prove that they have that intention. Or it could just be really boring in the dimension they live in. They need to spice things up a bit and entertain themselves. So.
Okay. And that sounds like a part 2 discussion. We might be able to cover something like that with next week's show, because I think we'll be covering Puck from A Midsummer Night's Dream a little bit next week. So that may fit into a 17th century example that buttresses Susy's assertion. Well, I don't what I wanted to ask. When people visit Point Pleasant and take your copy of the Mothman Prophecies and walk up and down the street and see places that John Keel wrote about. Was Mary's office across the street from the State Theater?
No, it was actually on 6th Street, same road that entered onto the Silver Bridge.
Okay, so it was further. It was a little bit further up up the street. Is that still standing?
Yeah, it's one of the white buildings there. I can't remember the number, but it's still there.
Okay, cool.
You also pass the house, the White House, which is just kind of kitty corner from Village Pizza.
Oh.
And Jeff Walmsley and his family lived on 30th Street, which is right on where Village Pizza is. And some of the original witnesses, so the Scarberry and Mallets, at least the Scarberry and Roger, they lived on 30th Street as well.
Okay, so yeah, there's quite a few blocks of where some of the characters from the book and settings are located. So you can walk all over, farther over town than I had thought.
And the police station that they Scarberries and the Mallets stopped at is right there on 6th Street as well.
Oh, okay. That's still thing. I did not realize that. Okay. I have to stop there for get a photo. If people make it into the museum during the festival, or just stop down any other time, you are able to show them the handwritten letter.
Oh yeah.
Incident reports.
There's 3 of them. I think I don't know if Steve Mallets is there, but they're there. The handwritten reports and they're reproduced. There's the Ingrid Cole, the real tapes. There's a memorabilia from the film, The Mothman Prophecies. Like I say, there's 5 documentaries, and one of them has a nice sitting room. And the documentary they show there came out about the same time the film did. And it's just, there's displays of the Men in Black and explanations about the first sighting, and there's a tribute to Carolyn Harris. And then you have, the newspaper articles. You have even a copy of the Military Stars and Stripes newspaper that first reported that Mothman sighting. It went all over the world on the wire services, the ones with the Scarberries and the Mallets. And they saw it by the Old North Power Plant. And I remember, referring to something you said earlier, I had read the book, and then in 1977, I drove down. I had been visiting some people I knew in the Buffalo area, and I just wanted to see the area. And I stumbled on the Low Hotel by accident, and I had a map of the TNT areas, so I drove out there that time, and I remember very little of it. I think I ate in Carol's steakhouse. It seems that was about where I ate that day. So it was pretty amazing. And I took these great photographs, black and white photographs of the Old North Power Plant, which doesn't exist anymore. And I probably haven't seen them for about 20 years. So I was hoping when I moved they would turn up, but not so far.
I'm sure they're somewhere in your stack of stuff.
That's some pretty good stacks of stuff.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a pack of photos like that. I'm usually pretty good at knowing where they are, but there's one pack of photos that I'm sorely missing, and I wish I could find it, but I'm kind of going through the same thing. But so you just visited nearly 50 years ago, and now you live and work there.
Yes.
Do you feel like things came full circle?
Yeah, I never. If somebody told me in 1977 that I'd be living in a working town here someday, I would have looked at them very strangely. And even when I started coming down to the festivals from 2006 on, never ever would have dreamed I'd be living down here. And it's very convenient with the thousands of people at the festival. I don't have to, struggle to get a hotel room or anything like that. I can literally walk in the street if I want.
Yeah, Jaci and Bill, what did you ever think that after your first visit that you'd become regulars?
Absolutely not. Bill was very depressed on the way home. He was like just sad, and he said, "I don't think I'm ever going to be able to go back." I mean, he felt like, because normally you go on vacation and then you go somewhere else, and that wasn't the case with us. Every year we've made it a point of getting to Point Pleasant at least once a year. It's something about the area. It's just so inviting and magical and fun. The festival in itself is just fun. I was so upset with Bill for so many years because I love that kind of stuff, and he hates crowds, and he would not go to the festival. We could go any other time, but we're not going for the festival. Well, we finally made it to the festival, and now he's all about going to the festival with me. So.
Yeah, my answer to that, Mark, is kind of the same as Jackie's was. To me, it was like a mountaintop type experience, because by the time we first went in 2016, I saw the movie in 2003, and then got John Keel's books and did all the reading and all that. And when we decided to take a vacation, like she said, I thought it was just going to be a vacation, but happenstance didn't work out that way. The first people that we met when we got to town were Carolyn Harris, who we dedicated our book to, and Mark Griffith, who was the first interview in our book. And we became friendly with Jeff and got to know him really well the next couple of years. And since then, we've just continued to build more friendships in the area, and it's truly a home away from home. But no, I mean, if you would have told me 8 years ago, after visiting there one time, that we would have written a book about the area, that we would have gone back once, if not two, sometimes three times in a year, because it's a 550-mile drive for us to get there, I never would have thought that was going to happen. But I really think that fate kind of played a role in this, and we got to know people like Steve and other folks within the research community that it's just really taken off for us. And I'm just really grateful that we decided that Jaci let me take her to Point Pleasant the first time, and that we've continued to go back for, going on 9 years now.
Excellent.
Yeah. It's literally a like homecoming for me. And my grandmother lived, grew up, from an early age until I don't know, maybe in her 20s or something like that. On the Kanawha River side of Mason County, and it's like 1920s. I think that would have been interesting to see. I'll stop and see James at the River Museum, see if they have photos. But do have some family roots there, and it's. I'd just like to see if there are some photos of the from the 1920s or so, and how the Kanawha River looked, and look at the flooding and things like that. How the landscape has changed. I find it very intriguing.
I've got a great photograph that I bought somewhere of Point Pleasant in the 1950s. With all the traffic and all the buildings and everything. And so that was, I love that picture. And I wish I could find my photographs other than with power plant, but I wish I had the presence of mind to have just taken all kinds of photographs of what Point Pleasant looked like back then. But I just didn't do it.
Those vintage river photos are actually just really captivating. You get some here in Wheeling of little kids walking across the Ohio River. I think it was 1908 where you could walk from Wheeling to Bridgeport and the little kids' calves aren't even getting wet, and then you also have people skating on the river under the suspension bridge. Those river photos actually instill an interest in nostalgia for me. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think I'm just kind of like one of those Huck Finn kind of people that just kind of like really has a connection to river systems.
Linda Sigmund, one of the Mothman witness back in 67, was talking about how she and I think it was her sister would walk across the Silver Bridge, and she'd actually have to carry her over some of the openings. I mean, the safety wasn't a big thing back then.
Denny talked about that too when we interviewed him, Denny Bellamy, about his sister would swing him over the big holes in the bridge.
Denny told some great stories about John Keel, how he'd watch him, laying on a recliner in the backyard, looked like he was looking to the sky, looking for UFOs or whatever. And his, I think it was his parents didn't want him to associate with him because he was some kind of a hippie from New York, or beatnik maybe it was from New York.
But there's, I think Steve makes a good point on the beatniks, and but there was a lot of traffic coming through the area at that time. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, it was a main artery.
Okay, so.
And Keel had a beard too, so that was a no-no.
Yeah, but it seems like there's still, not even counting the Mothman Festival. It just seems like there's still a lot of people coming through the area.
And a lot of people are stopping, and that's due to Jeff Walmsley and his family and friends who've done just wonders for that town.
And Jackie, I think 2 years ago, after the festivals resumed, there was a tremendous amount of people showing up for the festival. How many? You followed that pretty closely.
Well, the 2020 2023 festival, was it? 2022 festival.
Yeah, I think it's 22.
Yeah, over 20,000 people is what I heard.
It is. That's probably more than lives in the entire county.
Oh yeah.
And they were all.
Last year, the pictures on Facebook of people, of the cars lined up coming over the bridges was unreal. The lines were unreal coming into Point Pleasant. And the crowd was so much less last year, it seemed like, than it was the year before. So I didn't see any pictures then, but yeah, the year after COVID, I mean, it was crazy packed. And it was kept so orderly. It was just like amazing to me how clean it was kept, how whenever you had to go to the restroom, there was always toilet paper. There were always paper towels to dry your hands. There was not garbage on the ground. It was just amazing to me what a fantastic job Point Pleasant does with keeping it, kid-friendly, friendly.
Yeah, you get some of the people starting Halloween early, but Jeff runs a tight ship. You can still have fun, but there's not excessive weird stuff going on. And that's credit to Jeff. We're down to like 90 seconds. Does everyone want to give a quick plug for the book and the different podcasts you do, and then we'll have to say goodnight.
Go ahead, guys.
Susie, do you want to start?
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, on behalf on behalf of me and Steve, you can find us both on the High Strangeness Factor with Andy Mercer on the Paranormal UK Radio Network, and also on the Paranormal Book Club on YouTube. And both of us, Steve regularly and me once in a while, are on Mac Maloney's Military X-Files, also on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And you can find me on YouTube at the Puckwudgie Whisperer.
Yeah, Andy and Susie will show up on Mac Maloney's Military X-Files, and it is a hoot.
And Jackie and I are both pretty active on Facebook. You can find our pages. We have a organizational page called Phenomenology Research Professionals, but also Bill KOUSOULAS and Jackie Myers-KOUSOULAS. We're both very active on Facebook. And we have a website. It is called prpconnect.org, and you can email us at, what's our email address, honey?
prpconnect at outlook.com.
Outlook.com, yeah.
Okay, and we're down to 10 seconds. Yes, and people can find Steve at the Mothman Museum
on Saturday,
on the weekends.
Yep.
All right. Well, good night, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Have a good night, everybody.